What's up, guys? Welcome to June 12th as we dive into 1 Kings chapter 20, verse 23, where it talks about Ben-Hadad's second attack. After their defeat, Ben-Hadad's officers said to him, "The Israelite gods are gods of the hills. That is why they won. But we can beat them easily on the plains. Only this time, replace the kings with field commanders. Recruit another army like the one you lost. Give us the same number of horses, chariots, and men, and we will fight against them on the plains. There's no doubt that we will beat them." So King Ben-Hadad did as they suggested. The following spring he called up the Aramean army and marched out against Israel, this time at Aphek. Israel then mustered its armies, set up supply lines, and marched out for battle, but the Israelite army looked like two little flocks of goats in comparison to the vast Aramean forces that filled the countryside. Then the man of God went to the king of Israel and said, "This is what the Lord says. The Arameans have said, 'The Lord is a God of the hills and not of the plains.' So I will defeat this vast army for you. Then you will know that I am the Lord." The two armies camped opposite each other for 7 days, and on the seventh day the battle began. The Israelites killed 100,000 Aramean foot soldiers in one day. The rest fled into the town of Aphek, but the wall fell on them and killed another 27,000. Ben-Hadad fled into the town and hid in a secret room. Ben-Hadad's officers said to him, "Sir, we have heard that the kings of Israel are merciful, so let's humble ourselves by wearing burlap around our waist and putting ropes on our heads and surrender to the king of Israel. Then perhaps he will let you live." So they put on burlap and ropes, and they went to the king of Israel and begged, "Your servant Ben-Hadad says, 'Please let me live.'" The king of Israel responded, "Is he still alive?" "He is my brother." The men took this as a good sign and quickly picked up his words. "Yes," they said, "your brother Ben-Hadad. Go and get him," the king of Israel told him. And when Ben-Hadad arrived, Ahab invited him up into his chariot. Ben-Hadad told him, "I will give back the towns my father took from your father, and you may establish places of trade in Damascus as my father did in Samaria." Then Ahab said, "I will release you under these conditions." So they made a new treaty, and Ben-Hadad was set free. A prophet condemns Ahab. Meanwhile, the Lord instructed one of the groups of the prophets to say to another man, "Hit me," but the man refused to hit the prophet. Then the prophet told him, "Because you have disobeyed the voice of the Lord, a lion will eat you, will kill you as soon as you leave me." And when he was gone, a lion did attack and kill him. Then the prophet turned to another man and said, "Hit me." So he struck the prophet and wounded him. The prophet placed a bandage over his eyes to disguise himself, and then waited beside the road for the king. As the king passed by, the prophet called out to him, "Sir, I was in the thick of battle, and suddenly a man brought me a prisoner." He said, "Guard this man. If for any reason he gets away, you will either die or pay a fine of 75 pounds of silver." But while I was busy doing something else, the prisoner disappeared. "Well, that's your own fault," the king replied. You have brought the judgment on yourself." Then the prophet quickly pulled the bandage from his eyes, and the king of Israel recognized him as one of the prophets. The prophet said to him, "This is what the Lord says, because you have spared the man I said must be destroyed. Now you must die in his place, and your people will die instead of his people." So the king of Israel went home to Samaria angry and sullen. Chapter 21, Naboth's vineyard. Now there was a man named Naboth from Jezreel, who owned a vineyard in Jezreel beside the palace of King Ahab of Samaria. One day Ahab said to Naboth, "Since your vineyard is so convenient to my palace, I would like to buy it to use as a vegetable garden. I will give you a better vineyard in exchange, or if you prefer, I will pay you for it." But Naboth replied, "The Lord forbid that I should give you the inheritance that was passed down by my ancestors." So Ahab went home angry and sullen because of Naboth's answer. The king went into bed with his face to the wall and refused to eat. "What's the matter?" his wife Jezebel asked him. What's 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 made you so upset that you are not eating?" "I asked Naboth to sell me his vineyard or trade it, but he refused," Ahab told her. "Are you the king of Israel or not?" Jezebel demanded. "Get up and eat something, and don't worry about it. I'll get you Naboth's vineyard." So she wrote letters in Ahab's name, sealed them with his seal, and sent them to the elders and other leaders of the town where Naboth lived. In her letter she commanded, "Call the citizens together for a time of feasting and give Naboth a place of honor, and then see two scoundrels across from him who will accuse him of cursing God and the king. Then take him out and stone him to death." So the elders and other town leaders followed the instructions Jezebel had written in the letters. They called for a feast and put Naboth at a prominent place before the people. Then the two scoundrels came and sat down across from him, and they accused Naboth before all the people, saying, "He cursed God and the king." So he was dragged outside the town and stoned to death. The town leaders then sent word to Jezebel. Naboth was stoned to death. When Jezebel heard the news, she said to Ahab, "You know the vineyard Naboth wouldn't sell you? Well, you can have it now. He's dead." So Ahab immediately went down to the vineyard of Naboth to claim it. But the Lord said to Elijah, "Go down to meet King Ahab of Israel, who rules in Samaria. He will be at Naboth's vineyard in Jezreel, claiming it for himself. Give him this message. This is what the Lord says. Wasn't it enough that you killed Naboth? Must you rob him too? Because you have done this, dogs will lick your blood at the very place where they licked the blood of Naboth." "So my enemies, you have found me," Ahab exclaimed to Elijah. "Yes," Elijah answered, "I've come because you have sold yourself to what is evil in the Lord's sight. So now the Lord says, I will bring disaster on you and consume you. I will destroy every one of your male descendants, slave and free alike, anywhere in Israel. I am going to destroy your family as I did the family of Jeroboam son of Nebat and the family of Baasha son of Ahijah, for you have made me very angry and have led Israel into sin." And regarding Jezebel, the Lord said, "Dogs will eat Jezebel's body at the plot of land in Jezreel. The members of Ahab's family who died in the city will be eaten by dogs, and those who died in the field will be eaten by vultures. No one else so completely sold himself to what was evil in the Lord's sight as Ahab did under the influence of his wife Jezebel. His worst outrage was worshipping idols, just as the Amorites had done. The Amorites had done, the people whom the Lord had driven out from the land ahead of the Israelites. But when Ahab heard this message, he tore his clothes, dressed in burlap, and fasted. He even slept in burlap and went about in deep mourning. Then another message from the Lord came to Elijah. "Do you see how Ahab hath humbled himself before me? Because he had done this, I will not do what I promised during his lifetime. It will happen to his sons. I will destroy his dynasty." Chapter 22. Jehoshaphat and Ahab. For 3 years there was no war between Aram and Israel. Then during the third year, King Jehoshaphat of Judah went to visit King Ahab of Israel. During the time, the king of Israel said to his officials, Do you realize that the town of Ramoth Gilead belongs to us, and yet we have done nothing to recapture it from the king of Aram?" Then he turned to Jehoshaphat and asked, "Will you join me in battle to recover Ramoth Gilead?" Jehoshaphat replied to the king of Israel, "Why, of course, you and I are one. My troops are your troops, and your horses are your horses." Then Jehoshaphat added, "But let's find out what the Lord says." So the king of Israel summoned the prophets, about 400 of them, and asked them, "Should I go to war against Ramoth Gilead, or should I hold back?" They all replied, "Yes, go right ahead. The Lord give the king victory." But Jehoshaphat asked, "Is there not also a prophet of the Lord here? We should ask him the same question." The king of Israel replied to Jehoshaphat, "There is one man who could console the Lord for us, but I hate him. He never prophesies anything but trouble for me. His name is Micah, son of Amla." Jehoshaphat replied, That's not the way a king should talk. Let's hear what he has to say." So the king of Israel called one of his officials and said, "Quick, bring Micah, son of Amla." Second Chronicles chapter 18. Jehoshaphat enjoyed great riches and high esteem, and he made an alliance with Ahab of Israel by having his son marry Ahab's daughter. A few years later, he went to Samaria to visit Ahab, who prepared a great banquet for him and his officials. They butchered great numbers of sheep, goats, and cattle for the feast. Then Ahab enticed Jehoshaphat to join forces with him to recover Ramoth Gilead. "Will you go with me to Ramoth Gilead?" King Ahab of Israel asked King Jehoshaphat of Judah. Jehoshaphat replied, "Why, of course, you and I are as one, and my troops are your troops, and we will certainly join you in battle." Then Jehoshaphat added, "But first let's find out what the Lord says." So the king of Israel summoned the prophets, 400 of them, and asked them, should we go to war against Ramoth Gilead, or should I hold back?" They all replied, "Yes, go right ahead. God will give the king victory." But Jehoshaphat asked, "Is there not also a prophet of the Lord here? We should ask him the same question." The king of Israel replied to Jehoshaphat, "There is one man who could console the Lord for us, but I hate him. He never prophesies us anything but trouble for me. His name is Micah, son of Amla." Jehoshaphat replied, "That's not the way a king should talk. Let's hear what he has to say." So the king of Israel called one of his officials and said, "Quick, bring Micah, son of Amla." And so that's the info today. So I'm trying to think, like, it's really important that we understand or know who to ask for advice versus who not to be asking for advice. It's like, because, like, some people they lead us astray with what they have to share with the advice that they give us. It could lead us astray from God, while there'll be some people that will give us advices that will lead us towards God. And so be able to distinguish who are the people that helps to lead you towards God versus those who pulls you away from God and stuff. Because Ahab, he has prophets, like 400 prophets, and all of them lie to him. And sometimes the ones who are trustworthy are the ones who you kind of spend the least amount of time with, but yet you guys are sort of friends. That could be somebody. But sometimes I feel like if you ask friends with that kind of friends of it, if you're asking advice from somebody that knows you, but like, you guys are friends, but you don't always keep in touch with each other, I feel like they could give more of like a real and authentic answer, because they don't know you as well as they would like, so they're not like as biased as towards somebody who you know really well, who's gonna, especially towards those who knows you really, really, really well, and knows that you don't do well whenever you receive something that's bad, so they're gonna find somebody who you can trust, who can be honest with you, who's not gonna be biased with the answers, so yeah. And then Ahab and Jezebel is two of the worst, if not the two of the worst people in the world, sometimes worst humans to ever set foot on the planet and stuff. A man, Naboth, who's just minding his own business, it just happens that he doesn't want to sell his land. It's like Ahab, he cannot deal with the answer of no, so he cries about it, he complains about it. He creates a pity party for himself, which causes his wife to be even more sinister and cause the life of an innocent man to die because what? Because maybe empowered or not empowered and a very spoiled man can't handle a no. That's the thing. It's like this is why it's important to surround ourselves with people who fear God, who follows God. It's like I don't know. It's like it's just hard for me to like hear people like be friends with people that I just feel like they may not be. I mean, obviously, I think they can get to a time where they will be good people, but it's like sometimes their character does not give a good vibe about them. There's something about them feels off, and stuff. So like we gotta find friends who's gonna be able to lead, like I said before, lead you towards God, not leading you away from God. So like Jezebel definitely didn't lead Ahab away from God. And so when you're feeling entitled, how do you learn to accept a no instead of thinking that everything is about you, that everything should work for you, you know? Like don't be Ahab who just a crybaby. And I feel like we all sometime in our life struggles with saying receiving the answer no, so we complain to other people about it instead of just learning to accept the fact that okay, maybe this person does not actually want to give us what we want, and that's okay. Time to move on instead of dwelling on it and then create a pity party. Then somebody comes along who's bad influence in your life, gives you bad advice, does something bad, and then you are guilty. You're just as guilty as the person who committed crimes, you know. So, but I actually didn't know that Ahab actually like humbled himself before God, which is interesting, because I feel like Ahab never done that. So it was interesting, but like still that does not prevent. God acknowledges the humbleness of his humble acts, but that does not. But Ahab is not spared from his consequences, from his actions. He's still gonna get punished by, even if he does, even when he dies, may not see the full effects of his actions. His actions will still impact his next generations, his kids, and his grandkids, and his great grandkids. So and then the last part is Ben Hadad. Ugh. The God of Israel, the God that I worship, the Christians worship is not just the God of hills, God of sun. He's the God of the universe, of the whole No, not even that. The God we worship is the God of time. He created time, and so anything that falls into under the category of time will die. But God lives outside of that time. That's why He created time. So like it's so foolish to hear people like worshiping the creation, not the creator. When are we gonna stop doing that? And yes, we may not physically bow down to our physical needs, like physical things. Like how do we have self-discipline, self-control? It's like something I struggle with. Is like technology. Not born, but I grew up in like a very high technology kind of system. It's like surrounded by technology. So how do I not treat technology as like a god? Or like popularity, I want to be popular. I don't want to be known for somebody who is being disliked by anybody else. So like popularity itself is a god. So how do we deter away from the God figures in our life and actually focus on the God, real God, which is Jesus which is Jesus. But yeah, it's like no matter how big your army, no matter how big your problem is, when you ask God to help you to overcome something, to help you be stronger because of the problems you face, you're gonna get stronger, and that's But the first step to that is by asking God for help, right? You can't just do everything on your own and stuff. So yeah, that's all I have to share. So may you guys go and walk with God today.